My only announcement for this week is that next week there will not be class because I forgot I was gonna do an event with some kids. And then the week after, the 27th or the 28th, whatever that date is on that Wednesday, we'll have Lincoln Best to do Pacific Northwest bumblebees. And still lining up more for the rest of the year. So at this point, I will let you all introduce yourselves. Yeah, Sam. Who is muted?
Okay, if this makes sense to you too, I would say that people who are here for the class could put into the chat a vote as Elaine's talking about things they would like to see, and I can pull the specimens for that. And then, and just a notion that we don't have to finish per se, and we could invite you back if we just go into the details, as seems to happen a lot. So, yeah. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah, we have a lot of flexibility, and pretty much we can do this whenever you want.
Okay, so I'll just announce then to everyone that while Elaine's talking and she's explaining different ID features and whatnot, and if you want to see them on a specimen, put it into the chat, and then I will try and line it up. And then if there's time, we'll look at them under the scope.
And if for some reason I know that chat doesn't work for everybody, I'll also have my email open.
Okay, all right, that's good.
Take it away.
So taking it away, Elaine has, we didn't get any bio, but I've visited Elaine, and she has been one of my favorite colleagues, and has been working a lot on bumblebee populations and dynamics. And I'm not going to do her service because I don't know all the other things she's been doing, but we've done lots of discussing of what's going on with Bombus affinis in particular. And I'm going to shift now to letting Elaine actually do a good introduction to who she is and all the other things that she's involved in, and who she's affiliated with these days. Thanks, Elaine.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm one of the people that the chat never works in Teams for me, so just let me know if there's anything I need to know about that's in the chat. So my name is Elaine Evans. I use she, they pronouns. I am at the University of Minnesota, and I am an extension educator here at the University of Minnesota, focusing on pollinator conservation, and I also am split half the time doing research. So I've been working on bumblebees here in Minnesota for a long time, since the late 90s. So I was or mid 90s. So I got to see affinis around here before they declined, and been keeping an eye on them. And I do a lot of work through my extension work. I do a lot of public participation in with bumblebee monitoring and other pollinator monitoring and habitat efforts. And today I'm planning on kind of two main chunks of going through bees. So I'm going to give some overviews, kind of a quick run through of species, focusing on some of the characteristics to pick apart tricky pairs or groups, and then so we'll take a couple breaks, particularly to look at specimens. And this is one of the resources. There's this that I think was possibly shared with people, but this is this guide to Minnesota bumblebees. It is available as a PDF online. There are 24 species that we have in Minnesota, so through most of the Midwest and Eastern North America, you just need to subtract off species. We have some northern ones that show up here in Minnesota and some western edge ones that are just, not in other places. There's a side for males and a side for females. So, and in terms of working through this, there's these red sections that are kind of the main things to start with. And then there's groupings there, and be sure to also read kind of the fine print next to a species if you think you're getting close to it using this resource, as there are details there to pay attention to. So let's see. Now I am
That is
sharing.
an awesome guide, by the way. We have already people affirming it. I put the link back in the chat if you didn't have it handy from the email. And we already have a request for vagans Sandersonii. So Sandersoni. There we go. Yeah. So whenever.
Yes, we will definitely get into Vagan Sandersonii.
A horrible pair, the worst imaginable. But go ahead.
Yeah. I wanted to mention that the information that I'm going to be presenting today is a very honed down version of a class workshop that I teach along with Zach Portman. And so we cover all 24 species that we have here in Minnesota, and we've been doing it virtually the last few years, hoping to make it also available, you know, kind of just as a fully online course. But anyway, don't have dates for the next time we'll do it, but we usually do it in the spring if you want to keep your eye out and join us for this, you know, roughly 6-hour long workshop that we do on bumblebee. Some general bumblebee things to pay attention to for ID. We end up talking about terga, the abdominal segments. So there's a lot that's done looking at hair colors of the hairs, and just a note on the terga. So I'll be, you know, using the terminology T1, T2, T3 for going through those, talking about those abdominal segments. That first tergite, you know, it comes up kind of curving around from the waist there, and is kind of small, but then that T2 is often longer than you might expect it to be. So that oftentimes T1 and T2 together can look like they're taking up kind of half of the abdomen. And we don't really end up seeing T6 or T7 a lot when we're looking kind of straight down on bees. But just a note, you know, sometimes you can really clearly see the distinguishing lines between the tergites, sometimes trickier. Another thing we use for some of the groups is the malar space. So this kind of cheek area between the eye and the mandible. There's some eyeballing you can do if it's really short or long. There's some more subtle differences where it does actually help to measure the length and the width. So if you have specimens, you can do this, or if you have good photos that are taken of that where you can really see this at the right angle, you can take these measurements from those photos too. And the thing here is figuring out where to measure. So you want to take the lowest point from the eye to the highest point of this kind of curve for the length. And for the width, you want to go from where the mandible is attaching over. There's a bump on the far side, and you want to go to the end of that knobby bump. And then you can look at the ratio of that length to width. There are sometimes features where you need to look at the flagellum on the antennae, so these little segments in the flagellates. So and they start counting from, so there's the scape and the pedicel, and then you have F1, F2, F3, usually kind of just in this kind of early range of things. Sometimes there's actual flagellates that you need to look at, again, kind of length of those segments and doing some comparing. The hind leg, a lot of times we're just looking at features that are either on the tibia or the base of tarsus or somewhere around there, also paying attention to things going on with the hairs around this. For some males, you really do need to look at genitalia to be sure. It's not as bad as it may seem to get these genitalia out of fresh specimens, or you can rehydrate them. I usually just use a little insect pin, and they have all these hooky parts in there that it's pretty easy to hook them onto a pin and pull them out. And then oftentimes there's really clear differences looking at these hooks or these the arms, the different features on there. I just wanted to give a shout out to a resource that Zach Portman put together on his website, where he has really beautiful photos of a lot of different species to really be able to see clearly. And again, it's just kind of, getting them at the right angle, getting good lighting, having a good reference to compare it to just see differences in the shapes there. For general overall, when you're starting with Bumblebee ID, a few steps to go through. First thing is looking at if it's a male or a female. There's a lot of similarity between male and females, but there are some species where they look completely different, and it really does help to know what you're looking at first. A good thing to eliminate for possibilities too is if it's a parasitic bumblebee, the cuckoo bumblebees in the subgenus Cythrus. And then general features for looking at color patterns on bees are looking at what's going on with the color between the wing bases, and then the color pattern on. So for males versus females, males are generally more slender and they have longer antennae. They also have fuzzier faces. So a lot of times there'll be just a lot more hair, or there'll be lighter colored hair coming off, especially off the front. But then they'll also have these beards down, coming off down near the mandible. They also oftentimes have larger eyes, sometimes much larger eyes. And then on the hind legs, the males don't have the pollen basket. So if you see pollen on the legs, that's super easy to just go, that's a female. If the pollen isn't there, you should be able to still look at that hind leg. And on the females, you'll see a wider leg. It'll be indented. And the hair, so males have hairs around on their tibia as well, but the hairs around the pollen basket tend to be longer and arching, and kind of those spikier hairs used to hold pollen basket there. For recognizing parasitic bumblebees, a lot of times they have these curled abdomens, usually sparse hairs on the abdomen. A lot of times just mostly dark, sometimes yellow around the middle or around the tip of the abdomen. Even the females don't have the pollen baskets, so looking on their tibias, they don't have that indentation. They also, the main thing that's easiest to see are these, can be easiest to see are these big heads. So looking down from the top or the side, so their heads are big, kind of going back that way. So either the top or the side, you should be able to see these big chonky heads they have for their powerful mandibles that they use to help control, bite at and control their. Looking at the color between the wing bases, people call it a lot of different things: interalar space, band on the thorax, band between the wings. But it's all about looking for the colors of hairs, especially close to the wing. Can be a note there to be sure that you're looking at hairs and not just blank spots. So there can be worn areas where this bee may look dark here, but it's not because of dark hairs. It's just because of their dark cuticle. So just making sure that when you're saying something is dark, that it's hairs that you're seeing. And then here's some examples of, T1 is yellow, T1 yellow, T2 partially brown. So just the way that we talk about the color patterns on the abdominal segments. So quickly breezing through some species. The big three for Midwest bumblebees are impatiens, bimaculatus, and griesocollis. And so those are the three most common species, and they're pretty easy to tell apart. For impatiens, males and females are similar, not, mostly yellow near the wing bases, and T1 is yellow, the rest of the abdomen is black. One thing to watch out for with that, looking at T1, is it does have that kind of 3D shape because that segment is coming up from the waist and curving around. So sometimes you can see this kind of split there that you might think that's the end of T1, but that's just kind of that's actually T1 is going all the way through to the edge of that yellow. So just watching out for that. A note that impatiens and a lot of other bumblebees can have this thing happen where black hairs go to red. So you can see impatiens that have these kind of odd clumps of red hair on them. For bimaculatus, the two-spotted bumblebee, T1 is also all yellow, but then on T2, you have black on the sides and then this W shape, these two spots in the center. Same with the male. The male, this can be all black, but there are oftentimes males that have a lot of yellow further down on the abdomen. So on the sides here, before you get to that kind of two spot in the middle, it's a really distinct line between the black and where that spot starts in the middle. The W can be super clear, sometimes not so clear. The males can be tricky, so that black on the sides isn't always super clear. Sometimes there is a lot of yellow on the sides of T2 as well, but you will still see black hairs somewhere near that edge of T2 on either side. They also, I mentioned, can have a lot of yellow down on the abdomen. So just being aware that those fairly common for those bimaculatus males to have some weird color patterns. For the brown belted bumblebee, again, T1 is all yellow, but then on T2, they have this swoop in the middle where they have rusty brown and yellow up against black. So important thing to note here is that where they have this rusty color, the color right behind it is black. Males and females have similar color patterns. There's a lot of variability in the kind of how much of that T2 is taken up with that swoop. There's a lot of variability in how much yellow or how much brown rusty color there is, but there will always be some swooping, and there'll always be black hairs, at least at the farther edge of T2. The male griesocollis have very large eyes. There are some other males that have even larger eyes, but it is pretty notable how large their eyes are. They also, the males are really distinctively round. So getting into these T1 and T2 yellow bees, so we'll get into vagans Sandersoni here. For vagans, the half-black bumblebee, T1 and 2 are black. They tend to have yellow hairs close to the wing bases. Males and females are similar. Males just have some more yellow on the front of their face. So they're pretty kind of a smaller bee in general and tend to be pretty shaggy. And the males especially can have yellow hairs showing up down on their abdomen. For Sanderson's bumblebee, they oftentimes have more black hairs kind of near the wing bases, but again, T1 and 2 yellow. Sometimes they have white hairs near the end of the abdomen. Males and females similar. So a typical Sandersoni will have those have darker hairs going closer to the wing bases than you would see on vagans. So vagans would usually have yellow through here. They'll typically have some yellow hairs down near the end of the abdomen. But saying typical, there is variability. And so for females, to more reliably tell the difference, it involves looking at that malar space. So looking at them straight on here, you can kind of, if you convince yourself, you can see a difference with the malar space being shorter in Sandersoni, but hard to really hone in on it. But if you do get, again, with specimens, or if you have a good photo out in the field, if you get them to sit still, you can usually see it being the malar space generally longer in vagans, T5 generally dark, Sandersoni, that kind of medium malar space, T5 oftentimes has white or yellow hairs down there. But digging in, it does help to do some measuring of the malar space, and you can use that ratio that we talked about at the beginning. So getting the length versus the width for vagans, that malar space is longer than it is wide, and Sandersoni is wider than it is long. So there is a difference that can, you can get used to eyeballing it, but it's good to be able to do this measurement as a backup. For males, the color pattern is even less reliable, as the males, especially in vagans, will oftentimes have yellow down different places, lighter colored hairs down on T5. For them, the malar space isn't reliable, but you can look at their antennae. Sandersoni, if you have specimens and you can zoom in, Sandersoni has these hairs on the underside of F1 and F2. It can be hard to see those from photos if you're working from photos, but from photos, I have been able to if, as long as the antenna is actually in focus, you can get a look at what's happening. And here you're looking at F1, F2, and F3. So on vagans, F3 is 2 times as long as it is broad. So and no hair. Sandersoni will have that hair on F1 and F2, and F3 is 1.5 times as long as broad. So this is, again, you can eyeball it, but it's pretty close, 1.5 times compared to 2 times as long as broad. So it does help to just be able to measure that feature. Perplexus is another one that has T1 and 2 are yellow. Sometimes T3 has yellow as well. Perplexus is one of these highly variable bees, but they are even shaggier than vagans. So I talked about vagans being shaggy. Perplexus is even shaggier. In Minnesota, the pattern that we typically see is T1 and 2 are yellow, and T3 just is partly yellow. But more reliably, you can look for darker hairs on the side of the thorax and hairs going across the center of the thorax. So on vagans and Sandersoni, there'll be some bald spot here. Perplexus has hairs that cover that spot. So again, Perplexus, look for those for that dark side too, if you have any questions about it. Whereas both vagans and Sandersoni will have light hairs on the side. I'm going to throw in Rusty Patch here as well. So they have T1 and 2 are mostly yellow. There's the Rusty Patch on the workers and males, but notably the queen does not have a Rusty Patch. So she just has those first 2 abdominal segments yellow, and the rest is black. For the males and the workers, you can look for this T-shaped thumb tap shape. It kind of looks like an umbrella with black hairs between the wing bases and some black hairs going back towards the abdomen. The males, that thorax band can be less well defined. That rusty patch that you'll see on T2, so it's on the top edge of T2, there'll be rusty brown or orange hairs. The back side of that will be yellow, so that's a way to tell them apart from the rusty crescent that you'll see on the brown belted. But just to mention that rusty patch itself can be small, it can be obscure, it can depend a lot on how the light is hitting it. They do have round faces as well, so if you're worried about vagans, they have a much longer face. For the affinis queen, as I mentioned, they don't have the rusty patch. They don't have that black between the wing bases, that umbrella shape. So they have really similar color patterns to vagans, but vagans do have this long malar space. Affinis is a short malar space, and that's enough of a difference that you can reliably eyeball it. But also there's this gestalt difference where affinis, they're a lot bigger, they're a lot more kind of velvety, short, kind of cropped hair, whereas vagans, so these are two queens side by side. Vagans queens are a lot smaller, they're shaggier. And affinis here, they are lined up with some other queens. They are just one of the chunkier, bigger queens that will be around. And so you'll see them. They come out, fairly early in the spring, but you'll see them from late summer on. The new queens see out. One more bee to throw in here is the Southern Plains bumblebee, Bombus fratuernus, and then we'll take a break to look at some specimens. And so they also have T1 and 2 are yellow. They have a good amount of black hairs between the wing bases, black on the sides of the thorax, and they're also a large bee. So they are a good size bee and distinct enough with that the dark hairs on the side and the band on the thorax. So make sure to keep your eye out for these. They aren't terrifically common in a lot of places through the Midwest, but they are around. So we can look at some specimens and then talk about some more bees.
Thank you so much, Elaine. I
Super.
really like the Sandersoni male hair characteristics on the antennae, which I was completely unaware of. So we're going to add that to the guide. And I do need to review the males have always been the trickiest one, and a lot of them just end up as Sandersoni / vagans because of that. But now I think that's probably with specimens, you can pretty much 100% separate them out on that character. So, yay! Because I always learn so
chat
much.
went wild for that as well.
Yeah. So, because oh my gosh, we all struggle. I will also mention another character for perplexus that works really well because sometimes you have really goopy specimens, and sometimes the black on the sides, the mesepisternum, is almost gone or gone sometimes. So it's really difficult to see. But if you look at, I can try and focus under the scope. If you look at T6 around the rim, you'll see that in vagans and Sandersoni, which are the ones that we most often would mistake these for, it's all the hairs are black with possibly a little tiny skirt of minute yellow hairs. But in perplexus, which I'll throw up on the screen, you have my specimen here, there are long yellow hairs down there too. And a lot of times, particularly in like the horrible specimens we sometimes see, that's the obvious like, oh, what is that? Oh, there's those hairs. So let's see if I can go to the screen. I can show a couple Sandersoni pictures and vagans, and but I think your illustrations and slides were great, and maybe rather than delay the rest of your talk, we'll jump back in. But I just wanted to show this one. So I'm doing two things at once. Here we go, and people know how to use the guide. So let's go to the screen here, to the microscope, and wow, that is too much light. And get this in focus here. So we're looking at T6. That's, I think, sufficient. So we can go up a little bit more here in magnification, and I'll full screen this. So this is a little bit of a goopy specimen in itself, but these
Sam, sorry, cursor also.
Oh, right.
Thank
Let's
you.
see. There we go. Now we can see where we're talking. So these long yellow hairs and these long ones down throughout here, only on perplexus compared to the other two confusable species. So I find that a useful character. Two, Mallar space, we can take a look at I've got a Sandersoni here from the mountains nearby. Let me put this in the right place. And then I think I would, if people really want me to show anything in particular, I think it would be great to just go back to Elaine's talk. And then at the very end, we can look at more specimens or whatever, unless there's some burning specimen issue. So here's a Sandersoni one, and this has a nice extreme rear end where, and this is so not the norm, sadly, but you can see how much T5 there is in light colored hair. And I'm going to drop the light down here on this because it's too much. Yeah, it's way up there. Let's take it down to there. Here we go. And it is often a white color, different from the yellow elsewhere too. But gosh, you know, there's been so many. So vagans, I found sometimes like to sneak in some light colored hairs, even on the females from the side. And then you're like, is that sufficient or not? And then there's a great paper by Joan Malam and let's see, who from Wisconsin, Denny Johnson from Wisconsin, of course, where they actually very precisely measure Mallar spaces. And it turns out that if that's the only measure you have and you're good at taking these measurements, which of course you need the right kind of tools, that you can differentiate quite a number of species just on that. And so it's important to, and the paper points this out. Now, of course, it's too dark in here to see the Mallar space well. So I'll have to bump that up. Also have a leg issue. So we'll just bend the legs out of the way a little bit.
And which one are you putting up?
This is Sandersoni.
Okay.
I'm just going to show the Mallar space area. But again, I think if there's, I may just stop because I think Elaine has better pictures, and I'm not sure we need to see this per se on a specimen. So does that make sense? That we'll just turn this back over to Elaine. I think that's far more important to hear what she has to say than to just see more specimens that are better illuminated in, you know, precise pictures. I'm going to take that as yes.
That's a yes.
All right, Elaine, you want to carry on again?
All
I think we have it over on your ballpark again, and then we can look at specimens at the end if there's time.
Okay, yeah. So next up, I've got the very yellow bumblebees. So where we've got T1 through 4 are completely yellow. So Bombus fervidus have this black band between the wing bases, lots of yellow on the abdomen. Males and females are similar in color. The borealis has very similar color pattern with the same black stripe, lots of yellow on T1 through 4, males and females, again, similar. So for picking apart the females for fervidus and borealis, there are some pretty reliable color things to look at, where fervidus has mostly black hairs on the head, not all black hairs. There are some yellow hairs mixed in there, but mostly black, whereas borealis will have a lot of yellow hairs on the front and top. And then on the side of the thorax, it's the opposite, where borealis has a lot of dark hairs on the side of the thorax, especially this back part of the thorax, whereas fervidus is mostly yellow. They also generally, borealis tends to be kind of a more tawny, orangish yellow than fervidus does. For the males, we get to also throw in a couple others here, where Pennsylvanicus males also have a pretty similar color pattern, where they have a lot of yellow on their abdomen. So I'm throwing them in here, even though we'll talk about Pennsylvanicus more in a minute. But for the males, fervidus generally has a narrower band. Again, you can look at the hairs on the side of the thorax and the face. Will give you generally the same patterns as we saw with the females. For the Pennsylvanicus, they tend to have more dark hairs on the back half of the thorax, and they often have an orange tip on the abdomen, not always. Perplexus can sometimes have a lot of yellow going down the abdomen too, but again, you're not going to see the band between the wing bases. There are some, if you have worn specimens, sometimes for picking these apart, especially Pennsylvanicus and fervidus, sometimes with males, it does end up being best to pull genitalia. So now getting into Pennsylvanicus and these other ones that have T1 with a significant amount of black on them. So Oricomis, T1 black, T2 and 3 yellow, and then black again. They have a lot of black on their on the back half of their thorax. Males have a very different color pattern. And so the males have these really big eyes. Sometimes just behaviorally you can pick them out because they do a lot of perching. If you're out there watching bumblebees, they tend to perch and patrol. For Pennsylvanicus, again, these males have a different color pattern, lots of yellow, similar to fervidus. And so for picking these apart, for Pennsylvanicus versus Oricomis, there are some color things you can look at which are variable, but you can use it as kind of a first run, sometimes reliable, as good as sometimes reliable is. And with Pennsylvanicus, T1 will generally have some yellow on it, whereas in Oricomis, T1 will generally be mostly black with yellow kind of limited to the sides. Sometimes they have black going down onto T2. Also, another hair characteristic is on the top of the head. Pennsylvanicus tend to be all black on the vertex, just the very top of the head, whereas Oricomis will have some yellow hairs. So here's some photos where you can see difference here between Pennsylvanicus and Oricomis. I a lot of times prefer to look at the more at characters other than the hair. So there is this feature you can look at with the ocelli. And so basically the ocelli and Pennsylvanicus are higher up on the head. Looking at this at the right angle makes a big difference. So straight on, you can kind of see it. Directly from the top, it's really hard to see if you get this kind of in-between angle. You can draw this imaginary line over the compound eyes, and the ocelli are much closer for Pennsylvanicus, and then there's a gap with orocomis. This is a feature that can be hard to find, but because there's a lot of stuff going on there, but there are these spines at the top of the base of tarsus. So so here's their pollen basket up here. There's all kinds of hairs and different pollen combs, all kinds of things happening in this kind of juncture here between the tarsus and the base of tarsus. But if you can manage to get a look at this spine, there's a clear difference where on Pennsylvanicus, it's a long, sharp spine, and on Orocomis, it's a short spine. There's kind of a more lateral triangle.
Can you maybe line some of those up for us? Well, Elaine keeps moving.
Yes.
Cool.
And again, getting into Pennsylvanicus, the main things that are going to be confusing are with fervidus. Oftentimes this black band is bigger. Oftentimes they have orange down at the tip, but not always reliable. And sometimes, especially if specimens are worn, this is I already mentioned for Pennsylvanicus fervidus, you may need to look at the plan. For Terricola, they have the similar color pattern, but they have a couple easier things to pick them apart. They're a lot smaller. They are super round. And they also have this fringe of lighter hairs near the end of the abdomen. This is a queen hair, but you can see those lighter hairs down at the end of the abdomen on the workers and the males as well. So getting into everybody's favorite, the red bumblebees, where we get to talk about Rufus cinctus here, which are just kind of sometimes red. So Rufus cinctus are highly variable, tend to be kind of smaller, shaggier, and even within one colony, you can have multiple different color patterns. They don't always have that red belt. Lots of variety, but there are a couple of things you can key in on. So on their thorax, they do tend to have sparser hairs in the center. It tends to look kind of shiny. There are black hairs near the wing base. So Zach Portman, he calls this the Eye of Sauron. If there's any Lord of the Rings fans, if you're out there looking at bees, even from a distance, you can kind of pick out this eye-shaped feature that they have on their thorax. The other things to look for when you're looking at the color patterns on the abdomen, lots of variability, but you're going to always see yellow on T1 and a crescent of yellow on T2. And then at the edges of T2, it can be black or it can be red, depending on which color model you have. There is oftentimes also down on T4, there'll be a yellow band. It's also the only species where when they do have those red hairs, you'll see a mix of red and black hairs. So here you can see this kind of, T1 yellow, T2 going down onto yellow going down onto the middle of T2, but we're seeing red at the edges. Same thing is happening here with black. We can see that eye-shaped. This one has the racing stripe down on T4. So lots of variability, but those are a couple of rules that you can use. So that mix of red, orange, and black hairs, can look kind of scraggly a little bit. Other species that have red, orange hairs don't tend to have that mix of the colors like that. For the males do get trickier. They have slightly enlarged eyes, not super big eyes. So those same color patterns generally apply to the males, but they can be a lot more very variable and just trickier to pick out. Turnarius is a lot easier to pick out. So our other red bumblebee we're going to talk about, they have this distinctive thumbtack. T1 yellow, T2 and 3 orange, T4 yellow, T5 black. Same kind of color pattern on males and females. Males don't always have that thumbtack as obviously, but really distinct differences between the tergites with the color patterns, and very consistent. So, you know, if you're getting confused at all with these, in general, Rubicinctus is a lot shaggier looking, and T2 will always have some yellow on it, whereas in Turnarius, T2 will always have red, orange hairs, and also tend to be just kind of more densely haired. To talk about parasitics, touching back on this, I talked about at the beginning about how to pick them out. For Cythrus ID tips, it can be really difficult. A lot of what's out there, by far the most common Cythrus that you'll run into is Citrinus. But if you see that big head, just take lots of pictures. If you're not collecting specimens, get a picture of the tip of the abdomen if it's a female, especially if it's not Citrinus. Males, even with good pictures, oftentimes need to end up doing microscope work with them. But for Citrinus, they have sparsely hairy abdomen. They usually have yellow at the edges of T3. The males can be particularly abundant in the late summer, and they do have this kind of thumbtack shape on the abdomen. Sometimes people think they might be rusty patch. It's some variability, but it's usually 3 of the segments. It can be sometimes just 2 segments that are yellow. So here's a female. You can see the big thick head. The males with the black hairs in the thorax, lots of yellow on the abdomen. So with that, we have some time for questions and specimens and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I think Sam has something queued up, but start putting questions in the chat, everyone.
I'll just mention a couple things like on Bombus pennsylvanicus. So does fervidus ever have a red tip to the abdomen? I've always wondered, because a lot of times I just lump the two, pennsylvanicus / fervidus. But
I mean, I've never seen it, but just because, and just because black hairs can go red. I mean, that usually is different than being red across the whole thing. When pennsylvanicus have that orange, it's usually across that whole segment. Whereas if it's that kind of, whatever happens that makes bumblebees go to orange, that's usually spotty. So I've never seen it, but
okay,
never say never.
Right. All right. I'll pay more attention to that then. I'll just a couple notes about
there
pennsylvanicus.
There are pennsylvanicus that don't have the orange tip.
Yes. Right. There's all this. Yeah. What if? So pennsylvanicus, a couple things that I use sometimes is after you look at a bunch of oricomos and pennsylvanicus, you also realize that the ocelli size is actually a lot smaller on pennsylvanicus, and it's be like, oh, that adds into my little list of reasons to scoot one way or the other. And then in the pennsylvanicus queens, though, which are sometimes hard to tell from the workers because some of the workers can be big, but if you do have a legit queen, the ocelli are often recessed quite a bit back in pennsylvanicus, which moves you closer to an oricomous-y thing too. So yeah, just an FYI warning. Okay, so I have the mysterious.
You muted yourself, sir.
Okay.
So you said we have the mysterious.
The mysterious spine. Let me. I was trying to hit the share, but okay. There we go. All right, I have on doc the basitarsal area, which should have the spine, which I believe is right here, but I think it is inadequate. This is pennsylvanicus. Let me move it around a little bit to demo that. Oh, look, the color changed. That's better. It's, as Elaine points out, it's a busy area there. So I'm going to flip this over and see if from the back side we can see this a bit better. Bit better. And then I've got a Oricomus on tap here too. So, Elaine, is this the spine we are speaking of?
Behind there. I can
behind
see it
here?
Yeah, I can see it behind there. It's
Okay.
dark black.
So this back here?
A little bit more to the left.
This or
that's
this?
more to the right. It's kind of back.
That.
Yeah, there.
Is it easier to see? I'm looking from what, depending on your orientation, let's call it the underside of the base of tarsus here with the short hair. Should I flip it over and try and angle? Okay. This may be why I've struggled with this character, is that I can't find it very easily. All right, let me try this angle.
Yeah, I do use it sometimes in the field, especially if I think it's Pennsylvanicus and I really want to make sure, because I don't see a ton of Pennsylvanicus in my area.
You actually use it in the field?
I do, just with the chilled specimen.
Oh, okay.
Or in a bee squisher, I just put them in a little squisher and get them to sit still.
So is this it here?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
under those hairs.
Let me change the background with a little bit here. We get it, lighten it up. All right, yeah, so as Elaine has said, there are other hairs around here, but this is actually integument spining its way out there.
Yep, and it kind of comes up from the curve of the base of tarsus, and then it goes out.
Okay, let's see if we can move this over a little bit. Oh, so difficult to find in there, isn't it? So
yeah, it's right under.
Right. Yeah, so there's these long hairs occluding it a little bit, but this is the, if I'm getting it right, this is the basic format right here, right?
Mm-hmm. And so we can see the tip of it there, and just from how long the spine is, it looks like Pennsylvanicus.
Yeah. Okay, let's put a Oricomus up, and I will put this one in its right box somewhere here. And Oricomus I have out and have backed its leg off. Pull this off here. Stick it in that way. So big. All right, we're zooming in. There's the base of tarsus. I think I am seeing the spine, the shorter spine here, which should be here. Are we talking that? Okay. So it's not a has, doesn't have, it's a relative. So is this the width of it? So is it a roughly equal length by width kind of thing in Oricomus, or is it just like you have to look at a series and know that that's short and the other's long?
Yeah, it is. So Oricomus, it is really kind of, roughly just like a little triangle like that.
More nub.
Roughly as wide as it is long, whereas in Pennsylvanicus, it's a long spike. So much longer than it is.
Okay.
This wide and just going out to, like a sharper tip. So it's also just, more of a blunt spike on Oricomus.
Okay.
Which it's hard to see.
Right. Not well, let me I'm gonna bump up the light here and see if it helps at all. And people should be asking some more questions. That
I
might
have
work.
nothing in the chat. This is
You
stout.
did such a complete job,
I know.
Elaine, that everyone is completely satiated with bumblebee identification. That was a great talk too. All right, so that's our shorter spine. And you know, we have all these lovely little bristles coming off of the tarsus, and then some big curvy hairs to obscure things. Okay.
So yeah, those are, yeah, you could, I'm seeing the edge of the shorter spike now. So there's the darker hairs there, and then you can kind of see that if you keep on going up, you can
This
see
way?
the edge. That's where, yeah, that's where the edge of the spine is.
Now, are you talking about this?
Yep, going and then going up and back into the leg. So yep, you're like right in the middle of the spine right now.
All right. All right, I'm going to add more light and let's see if we can define what's going on in there, because I am not sure, you know, where are hairs, where are spines is still a little murky. So let's back off and we'll really jack that light up. Maybe even more. I think I can, how about that? All right, well, that's probably, I can't see it there. Maybe not enough. All right, so this edge here is what?
That's the edge. So that lighter colored brown is the spine. That's kind of up from there. So that line is the edge.
This is the spine, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Not this. This is
Those are some hairs. I don't know what those
hairs.
are.
Oh, okay. So I was completely fooled. I was thinking this was the spine, and the reality is this is the spine, which is quite short and a little bit difficult. See if I can change the focus here. A little bit difficult to define. And well, since there's no chatting, I might go back to our Pennsylvanicus one and see if we can define that one a little bit better than I did.
It does help to kind of follow up from the base of tarsus, from that top edge. You know, there's the curve that comes up and then it goes kind of out into a spike.
Okay, so here's
here's
the margin of the beta tarsus. Then this curve here. So basically, is this all? So there's hairs and stuff in the way. Is this a uniform plane? Or are we talking about some kind of line or suture here? Is this all the?
It is uniform.
Okay.
There isn't a suture for the spine.
All right. So we've got that. So that curve is. So here's this relatively straight margin.
Where the curve starts happening.
The curve. I want to go back and look at Pennsylvanicus again now, if that is acceptable to people, or we can do something else.
Well, I have two things. There's not a question, but Anne was wanted to say the whole webinar, the comparisons by pairs or groups of similar bumblebees and showing the characters on specimens. Really great, very useful, many thanks. And then it is also just about 2 o'clock, but I am not on school pickup duty. So if either of you don't need to go, I can keep us on longer.
Okay. At minimum. So let me, Elaine, if I'm looking at, which I am, I'm looking at under my other scope, the Bombus Pennsylvanicus, it seems in this one that going from underneath, I can see it easier than going from on top. Well, okay, I think, all right, I've got it. I think one of the things was that I was expecting it to be also in the same plane as the base of tarsus, but the spine is not simply in the same plane as the basotarsus. At least this is my interpretation right now, but curves at sort of a 45 outside of that too. Let's see if this is going to show up. I'm trying to get a different angle on this. That should be the one I'm trying to see right there. So we're looking at a spur. Now I think I need to drop the light down. So on the left-hand side is a spur that's coming off the tibia. And
Right,
what I'm
you have to make sure
trying to
you're not
show.
looking at the tibial spurs. Those are
Yeah.
those are a lot easier to find, and they're always going to look long and spiky.
So now I'm trying to line up. I'm just at too high of a magnification here. The spine, which is here, right? Would you agree, Elaine, or am I off again?
I'm not sure what that is.
All right, so we're looking on the
Zoom back
under.
out a little bit.
Okay,
Give us a little
so
bit of perspective.
so we're looking on the underside again, and this is the area that I'm keying in on. Just because from the upper side it was there were a bunch of hairs in the way.
Yeah, I found, upper side versus underside, it kind of, it depends on the hairs and the way. I don't reliably do either one. Sometimes have to flip them over.
Yeah. Okay, this appears to be the spine, but we can flip it over and see it from the upper side too. Darn those tricky bumblebees. Let me look at my other microscope here first. All right. Okay, we're going to try this angle. Blowing out with light. Okay, we're going to look on the left side here. For some reason, the scope has a huge lag time today. All right, let's go back down. Okay. Like I just about get it, and then I goes too far. Okay, so this should be the spine, right?
Let's see, something is right in the way.
I'll move it up carefully because I'm at 5x.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So I'm looking more obliquely this time, just so that I can get a better shot. Because if I turned it sideways and all this hair was covering the spine, so I'm looking, so the basotarsus is forward here a bit. Okay. All right.
And it seems like twice as long, probably.
Yeah.
So
why
don't I just
yeah.
I can just share the photos I have one more time just to.
Yep. let's flip to your screen. Let's see, maybe I need to unshare here.
That work?
Yes, you got it.
Yeah. So yeah, just kind of following up the curve at the base of tarsus, and this is the longer one on Pennsylvanicus, and then really stout.
So if I'm looking on your, can you see my cursor at all or not?
Mm-mm.
Okay, no, because that would be, I can't show it on yours, but it seems like, could you point to the tip of the spine on the Bombus Pennsylvanicus one? Got it. Okay. I was, see where your red arrow is?
Yeah.
I was going for that high. I was like, that is the spine. That is a very weird blunt spine. But now,
it was too blunt.
Okay.
But I don't know what that is, but
yeah. Okay.
But yeah, you need to be able to see that it's attached to the base.
Got it.
Yeah, and
no.
there's the tip on the orc.
Okay. Today I learned.
Bam for the TikTok.
Right. It could be an entire TikTok video on the architecture of bumblebees. Elaine, anything else on ID wise? Do you want to talk about bumblebee preparation? Do you usually pull the genitalia on all the males, or only when you have a problematic one?
Yeah, only when I need to.
Yeah. And realistically, when do you need to do that? What are the groups that you might think I really do need to pull the genitalia on this because they're so tricky?
Yeah, I mean the Pennsylvanicus, just because and fervidus versus fervidus. Yeah. But and a lot of the Cythrus males, that's the group where really kind of you could probably have to for a lot of those. A lot of the other males, I mean, sometimes just with Rufus Cinctus, because they're so variable, just making sure if there's doubt. But most of it's not all that frequent.
Yep. I missed the some of your talk on the Cythrus group, but do you have Fornaldi up there, or whatever the current name is, and are you using that like dog hangnail aspect on T7 for ID?
I'm not sure what you're saying.
Yeah, I think of it as the toenail of a dog on the very tip.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right, just confirming. I'll have to go back and watch because I was busy trying to find these spines.
I pretty much only talked about Citrinus and said take pictures of everything else.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no,
but we do in our workshop we go through ID for more of this.
Oh, okay, that's why I missed it. Yeah, there's some really interesting features, but hard to describe, that you have to look at it under the microscope for the back ends of the females. All right. Well,
I do a lot of, especially with since I'm in an area where we have the rusty patch bumblebee. We're starting to do a lot more surveys where we're not, we can't collect bumblebees. So doing a lot more site ID out in the field, spot ID. So we do for that spot ID. Well, for where we are in Minnesota, we don't see Sandersoni very much at all. So it's when we're in the southern part of the state, we can pretty reliably just call them vagans. But I do end up for spot ID, I usually do end up grouping Oricomis and Pennsylvanicus, but can pick apart like fervidus and borealis, and training techs with a few hours of training and some time in the field. I feel like those are groups that we've been able to reliably tell apart.
Great. All right.
Well, there's nothing in the
Claire?
chat. There's nothing in the chat. Anybody want to unmute? Here's your chance, it sounds like, but yeah. Otherwise, we will not see you next week. Back at the end of the month for Pacific Northwest bumblebees. Elaine, you are more than invited back if you want to ever ask for feedback on guides or just hang out or whatever it is that you want to participate.
Yeah, great. I love that you all are doing this. It's a fabulous resource.
All right. Well, and it'll be up on the web, so you can point people that way if you want to. All right.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Next week, nothing. Claire is gone, so everything collapses.